I scrubbed his mistress's bathwater while he planned their baby in New York. He thought I was just the help, disposable, invisible, desperate. What he didn't know? I owned the hospital where she'd give birth, the hotel where they stayed, and the company that signed his pathetic paychecks. Let me tell you how I destroyed him. 6 months ago, I did something most billionaires would never dream of doing. I became a maid. Not because I needed the money, God knows I didn't, but because I needed to disappear. My name is Letitia Rousseau, and 3 months before I took that job, my grandmother passed away and left me everything. And when I say everything, I mean a fortune that spans luxury hotels across Europe and North America, a chain of private hospitals, pharmaceutical investments, and real estate that would make your head spin. But with that money came vultures, fake friends, gold diggers, distant relatives crawling out of the woodwork with their hands out. I was suffocating, so I ran. I created a new identity, wore my hair different, dressed down, and took a live-in housekeeping position with a couple in their pristine suburban home. I wanted to meet real people, genuine people, people who would treat me like a human being when they thought I had nothing. That's how I ended up working for Brandon and Margot Fletcher. Margot was kind from day one. She'd always ask about my day, leave me little notes thanking me for my work, and she volunteered at children's charities every weekend. She had this warmth about her, this genuine goodness that you rarely find in people. Brandon, on the other hand, treated me like I was part of the furniture. He'd snap his fingers when he wanted something, never made eye contact, and spoke about me in third person while I was standing right there. "Tell the maid to pick that up," he'd say to Margot, like I didn't have ears or a name. But I played my part perfectly. I kept my head down, nodded, smiled when appropriate, and cleaned their house like my life depended on it. And I watched. I watched everything. It started with the phone calls. Brandon would step out onto the back porch late at night, his voice low and secretive. I have exceptional hearing. Always have. And one night I caught fragments of a conversation that made my blood run cold. "Baby, I promise, by next month I'll have you in New York. We'll finally start our family there, just like we planned." The way he said it, with such tenderness, such promise. It was the same way he used to speak to Margot before they got married. I'd seen their wedding photos on the mantel. I felt sick. Margot had been planning a surprise anniversary dinner for weeks, calling caterers, picking out the perfect wine, having her dress altered. She adored this man. She trusted him completely. And he was planning a whole separate life without her. I should have walked away. I should have quit and gone back to my penthouse and forgotten about these people. But something in me wouldn't let it go. Maybe it was because Margot reminded me of my grandmother, that same generous spirit, that same blind trust in people who didn't deserve it. Or maybe it was because Brandon represented everything I'd been running from, people who thought wealth and power meant they could treat others as disposable. So I stayed. And I started digging. I called my family's private investigator, discreetly of course, and had him look into Brandon. Within 48 hours, I had a file thick enough to put him away for years. Brandon worked as a mid-level finance manager for Hartwell and Associates, a consulting firm that, as it turned out, was a subsidiary of one of my family's holding companies. The irony wasn't lost on me. But more importantly, Brandon had been embezzling, small amounts at first, then larger sums. Nearly $200,000 over the past year, all funneled into a separate account. And then there was her, Cassidy Monroe, 26 years old, aspiring model and influencer with 12,000 followers and a history of dating wealthy older men. She was beautiful, I'll give her that, with long auburn hair and a smile that probably made men stupid. She and Brandon had been seeing each other for 8 months, and she was 3 months pregnant. The baby wasn't planned, according to the text messages my investigator recovered, but Brandon saw it as an opportunity, a fresh start. A new family with a younger, more exciting woman. He'd promised Cassidy a penthouse in Manhattan, a nursery decorated by some celebrity designer, and a life of luxury, all funded by stolen money. I wanted to tell Margot immediately. I wanted to show her everything and watch her throw him out. But something told me to wait, to let this play out, because karma doesn't just tap people on the shoulder, it destroys them. And I wanted Brandon destroyed. Then came the day that changed everything. I was folding laundry in the basement when I heard the front door open. Margot wasn't supposed to be home. She was at a charity luncheon across town, but it wasn't Margot's voice I heard laughing in the foyer. It was a woman's voice I didn't recognize, high and musical, followed by Brandon's low chuckle. My heart started pounding as I crept up the basement stairs. They were in the living room. Cassidy, in a tight designer dress that showed off her small baby bump, was sprawled across the couch like she owned the place. Brandon was pouring champagne, sparkling cider for her, he joked, into crystal glasses that had been in Margot's family for generations. I watched from the kitchen doorway, my hands gripping the laundry basket so hard my knuckles went white. Brandon saw me and didn't even flinch. "Oh, make yourself useful," he called out, waving me over. "Bring us those cheese appetizers from the fridge, and use the good plates." I set down the laundry and moved like a ghost into the kitchen. I plated the cheese and crackers on my own family's Limoges china, pieces I'd had quietly donated to a high-end thrift store where I knew Margot shopped, just so I could see them again. The irony of serving Brandon and his mistress on china worth more than his car was almost funny. Almost. I brought the tray out and set it on the coffee table. Cassidy looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "Does she even speak English?" she asked Brandon, loud enough for me to hear. "God, Brandon, you really live like this? Can't wait until we're in the penthouse and have real staff." Brandon laughed, actually laughed, and reached into his wallet. He pulled out a $1 bill and held it out to me. "Good work today," he said with mock sincerity, then patted my head like I was a dog. "You can go now." I took the dollar with shaking hands, bowed my head and backed out of the room. But inside, I was planning their complete and total annihilation. That night, I made the call. Not to my investigator this time, but to my attorney and my executive team. I wanted everything ready, every piece in place. And then I waited for the perfect moment. It came 2 weeks later when Brandon announced his business trip to New York. Margot's face fell when he told her, but she forced a smile and helped him pack. I watched her slip a love note into his suitcase, something sweet about missing him and counting down the days until he returned. It broke my heart. But I had work to do. The day Brandon left, I sat Margot down with tea and very carefully, very gently, started asking questions. Had she noticed anything different about Brandon lately? Any unusual expenses? She admitted she'd found a jewelry receipt for a necklace she'd never received, a charge at a restaurant they'd never been to together. Her hands trembled as she spoke, and I could see her trying desperately not to connect the dots. I didn't push. I just planted seeds. And then I made my move. I flew to New York on my family's private jet that same night. Brandon and Cassidy had checked into the Rousseau Grand, my flagship hotel in Midtown Manhattan. The staff knew who I was, of course, but they were trained in discretion. I had them put me in the owner's suite on the top floor and monitor Brandon's every move. He'd spared no expense. Presidential suite, room service champagne, reservations at Daniel for dinner. All on the company card he thought no one was tracking. All at my hotel, spending my money to romance his pregnant mistress. The audacity was almost impressive. Cassidy had a prenatal appointment scheduled at Rousseau Memorial Hospital, again, mine, for the following morning. I made sure I was there. I walked into that hospital in a tailored Chanel suit, my natural hair styled perfectly, diamond earrings that cost more than Brandon's annual salary. The staff greeted me as Miss Rousseau, and I watched the fear ripple through the administrative offices as word spread that the owner was making a surprise visit. I went straight to the obstetrics wing and had a very quiet conversation with Cassidy's doctor. Within the hour, we had ordered a full paternity test as part of her routine blood work. Cassidy signed the consent forms without reading them. She was too busy taking selfies in the waiting room, and when those results came back 3 hours later, my suspicions were confirmed. The baby wasn't Brandon's. According to the DNA markers and Cassidy's medical history, the father was almost certainly a man named Derek Chen, a photographer she'd been seeing on and off for 2 years. My investigator confirmed it within minutes. Derek had no idea about Brandon. Brandon had no idea about Derek, and Cassidy was playing them both. I had everything I needed: the embezzlement evidence, the affair timeline, the paternity fraud. Brandon wasn't just a cheater, he was a criminal and a fool. Now came my favorite part. I arranged a private dinner at the hotel's most exclusive restaurant, Lumiere, which requires reservations 6 months in advance and costs more per person than most people's rent. I told Brandon's concierge it was a romantic surprise for the couple in the presidential suite, all expenses covered. Brandon was thrilled, texted Cassidy immediately, and they dressed up like they were going to the Met Gala. But when they walked into that private dining room, candles flickering and champagne chilling, they didn't find a romantic table for two. They found Margot. She sat there in a simple black dress, her eyes red from crying but her spine straight. On the table in front of her were printouts, bank statements, text messages, photos of Brandon and Cassidy together, and the paternity test results. I had flown Margot to New York that morning, shown her everything, held her while she sobbed, and then helped her get ready for this moment. She deserved to face him. She deserved to watch him crumble. Brandon went pale. Cassidy's mouth fell open. And then I stepped out from behind the decorative screen where I'd been waiting. I looked different than I had in their home. My hair was down in its natural curls. I wore a gown that cost more than their mortgage, and I walked like I owned the room. Because I did. I owned the entire building. "Hello, Brandon," I said, my voice steady and cold. "Remember me? You tipped me $1 once. Let me return the favor." I placed a $1 bill on the table in front of him, and the confusion on his face was priceless. "I don't understand," he stammered. What is this?" "This is karma," I said simply. "My name is Letitia Rousseau. I own this hotel. I own the hospital where your mistress had her prenatal appointment. I own the company that employed you until about an hour ago, when my executives terminated you for embezzlement. And I have evidence of every crime you've committed, every lie you've told, and every dollar you've stolen." The color drained from his face. Cassidy looked like she might be sick. "Oh, and Cassidy." I turned to her with a smile. "The baby you've been using to trap Brandon? It's not his, it's Derek's. You know, your other boyfriend? He's actually in the lobby right now. I thought you two should talk." Right on cue, the restaurant doors opened and Derek walked in, holding the paternity test results I'd messengered to him that morning. The look on his face when he saw Cassidy, saw Brandon, saw the whole setup, it was chaos in its purest form. Screaming, accusations, Cassidy trying to lie her way out of it while Derek demanded answers, and Brandon sat there in shock, his whole world imploding around him. Margot just watched, tears streaming down her face, but there was something else there too. Relief, freedom. And then the police arrived. I'd filed formal embezzlement charges that afternoon, and the detectives were very interested in talking to Brandon. He tried to run, actually tried to push past them, but they had him in handcuffs within seconds. I'd made sure of it. As they led him away, he looked at me with such hatred, such disbelief. "You can't do this," he spat. "I'll sue you. I'll tell everyone you exploited me, that you pretended to be poor to entrap me." I pulled out my phone and played a recording. His voice clear as day, admitting to the embezzlement, bragging about it to Cassidy, planning how they'd use the stolen money to start their new life. "I recorded everything, Brandon," I said quietly. "Every phone call you made while I cleaned your house. Every conversation you thought I couldn't understand. You're not just broke. You're going to prison." He crumpled then, right there in his expensive suit bought with stolen money, in my hotel, surrounded by the ruins of his own greed. 6 months have passed since that night. Brandon is serving 3 years for embezzlement and fraud. Cassidy lost everything: her influencer sponsorships, her modeling contracts, even Derek, who wanted nothing to do with her after the lies came out. She's fighting for custody with him now, last I heard, and losing badly. Margot divorced Brandon immediately. I gave her a position on the board of the Rousseau Foundation, managing our women's shelter initiatives, with a salary that lets her live comfortably and do the charity work she loves. We have lunch every month now. She knows who I really am, knows what I did, and she tells me constantly that I saved her life. But I think maybe she saved mine too. because watching her find her strength, watching her rebuild herself after betrayal, it reminded me why I went undercover in the first place. Not everyone with money is a monster, and not everyone without it is genuine. But real people, good people, they exist everywhere. You just have to look past the surface. I'm back in my world now, running my companies, living in my penthouse, attending the galas and charity events that come with my name. But I'm different, more careful about who I trust, more aware of how power can corrupt. And sometimes, late at night, I still think about putting on a simple dress and disappearing into someone else's life, just to see what I'll find. Because here's what I learned. People see what they want to see. Brandon saw a powerless maid. Cassidy saw a victim, but invisibility was my greatest weapon. And karma? Karma isn't just some mystical force that maybe shows up someday. Sometimes karma is a billionaire in a maid's uniform, watching, waiting, gathering evidence, and striking at the exact perfect moment to bring an empire of lies crashing down. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I think it's best served on Limoges, China, in a 5-star restaurant, with the police waiting outside. If you loved watching karma destroy these two, please hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment with the wildest revenge story you've ever heard. I read every single one, and who knows, your story might be featured next. And if you want more stories about justice, betrayal, and people getting exactly what they deserve, check out the videos on screen right now. Until next time, remember this: never ever underestimate the quiet ones. We're not weak. We're just waiting for the perfect moment to show you exactly who we are.